Welcome back to the Untouchaballs podcast. Caden and Leo here. Caden, how you doing today?
It's a fine Wednesday, Max.
It is a pretty fine Wednesday, and we got a pretty fine episode in store for you guys today. I think, at least, Caden.
Yeah, for sure. We're going over back in September, start of September, before the
Correct.
NFL season kicked off. We did an NFL stock market episode, if you guys remember that. We also did it with the NBA.
Correct.
Look out, because we'll have an MLB one coming out with me and Evan in about the next month or so, right as the season's about to kick off.
Gonna be exciting.
And now that football's over, we want to go through what we went over in that podcast. Like, did we hit in our predictions? Did breakout players break out? Did declining players decline, teams, whatever? We want to see how we did on that, let you guys know, kind of give a little insight into all that.
Kind of like our biggest swings, our boldest predictions basically is what it was for the season, for us to come out and stake our claim on what we think is going to be, the biggest play for the year. And honestly, Caden, I think we did pretty good.
Yeah, it was, looking back, we just rewatched it. Better than expected.
Oh,
We
yeah.
did actually a lot more hits than misses.
And I definitely kind of forgot that episode. It was so long ago.
Yeah.
I definitely did forget a little bit about
I mean,
what we said.
Yeah, it was the whole football season. And at this point, we've done about 75 more episodes.
Correct.
So it's been going. So yeah, a lot of it was read new information for us.
Most definitely.
And now, you talked about some big hits. Let's talk about how you were talking up rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels. Now he's going to be a big breakout player.
Most definitely, Caden. I mean, that since even, dating to last year when he was in the Heisman, that was a player I was looking at as the potential future prospect at quarterback. Just his athletic ability, the way he's able to, move and create plays with his legs. He's able to stand in the pocket, deliver strikes, deliver accurate strikes, Caden. That's the thing. That was kind of like the question coming is Jaden Daniels going to be able to throw it downfield, he's going to be able to hit his targets. He was swinging it this season. And not only that, Caden, the most important thing by far, the leadership trait. Jaden Daniels is a leader. He became, welcomed into that Commander's locker room. They really thrived. He built a great connection with Terry McLaurin. And that Commanders team was back in a position they hadn't been in decades.
Over 30 years.
It was really fantastic to see what they were able to accomplish this season.
Yeah, speaking on that, obviously, Jaden Daniels was the number 2 overall pick. There's a lot of hopes for him. But Mex was right in calling it. He's going to be one of these best quarterbacks in this draft class. He's going to be able to find a way to, whether it be sling it, run it, anything like that. And he showcased that throughout the entire season. And, you drafted him, obviously, in fantasy football to be like, This is my quarterback. You're like, I'm really high on this guy. You put it out there, and yeah, you were proven correctly. Easy rookie of the year in the voting for him, and just an all-around great start to his career. Another player, though, that you were mentioned when we were talking about Jaden Daniels as being up there in the rookie of the year race with Jaden was your boy Bo Nix.
Yeah, of course, Caden. I had confidence with Bo since early in the preseason, right? And I actually got to go down to a few, more than one, Broncos training camps this past fall and got to see Bo sling it a little. And most of the time it was with the second or third team. But just seeing this confidence where he carried himself, the swagger to say, you could really see that the Broncos had something special. Not only that, when you have a coach like Sean Payton, who's been around the game for so many years, he's seen a lot of the great players. He understands what it takes to be a great quarterback, and he also understands the traits that make a great quarterback. And ultimately, Bo was able to exhibit those all throughout the year, and he progressively got better. He was right there behind Jaden Daniels in the Rookie of the Year case, got the Broncos to the playoffs for the first time in
a decade,
basically. And since we were in elementary school, it was a very exciting year as a Denver Broncos fan, and just loved the way Bo Nix was able to take this role, take this team as his, and create excitement for the future.
Yeah, I wasn't as high on Bo Nix one season as you were. I thought he was probably the 4th best quarterback in the draft class. I thought he was, ahead of Penix and McCarthy. Obviously, we didn't see McCarthy play. We barely saw Penix play.
Correct.
But I didn't think he'd be able to do what he did this season, because especially you see the start of the season, they had a really sluggish start, especially offensive. Like, the defense was great to start the year, but they just weren't able to put a punch or anything. Then it seemed like starting with that Bucs game, when all of a sudden they beat the Bucs, we were both wrong with that. We thought Bucs were going to be able to win that, especially in Tampa, and that's really when the Bo Nix momentum started rolling.
Correct.
He was being able to find. Cortland Sutton had one of his better years of his career.
Yeah.
He was finding all these other players, whether it be, not really Troy Franklin because he dropped every deep ball, but Vele, Marvin Mims, anything like that. He was finding them accurately on these deep balls. And we saw his last year at Oregon. He was, I mean, before I guess this year with Dylan Gabriel, he was played the most games in a college career, and he was one of the most accurate QBs in college. And it ended up translating very well to him. He had a couple, obviously, rookie, just bad interceptions.
He had a couple bad games, too. And
yeah, a couple bad games.
First two were bad.
But he really went into his own, like you were saying, under especially a great coach to help build the quarterback in Sean Payton, where now Bo Nix, just like Jaden Daniels, is looking really bright for the future of their franchises.
Most definitely. Now, Caden, kind of transitioning, staying on the topic of quarterbacks, to a quarterback you were dogging on at the start of the year, but rightfully so. You want to explain that take?
So, yeah, in the stock market, it's so weird. Like, one of the players I was down on going into the year, it was Trevor Lawrence. I didn't understand why he was getting paid like a top 10 quarterback when he was at best an average quarterback in the NFL. And, I mean, it showed this year. While obviously his season got cut short when he got speared by the Texans player.
That was horrible.
But in the games we did see him playing, he did not look good. He did not look like a $50 million a year quarterback. He looked more in the, not even like an average, he looked more in the back half of the quarterbacks. Like a lot of these rookie quarterbacks were outplaying the, I guess at this point, a proven guy more. Correct. In Trevor Lawrence, and you're letting Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, even Drake May, who played probably about as many games as Trevor Lawrence, outplayed him this year on a statistically and just on like a worse overall team. I'd say like less weapons and everything,
less support, less experience,
and then you got Goldilocks over there in Jacksonville, just not doing much at all. Like they had a lot of like NFL and analysts and stuff were really high on Jacksonville going into the season. They thought they could contend with the Texans for the top of the AFC South. I did not believe the hype in Trevor Lawrence, and it showed.
Most definitely. That was a pretty big, bold take, I'd say, especially considering the wide, like you said, margin of Trevor Lawrence supporters going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, speaking on more like the things we were correct on the downside, it was one of the first things I brought up in that stock market was the Panthers under on their win total. It was set at 5.5, and it was plus money for them to go under. So both that combined just didn't make sense to me because we saw how bad they were in the rookie year of Bryce Young. And then obviously, you had the coaching changes. You're like, maybe something could happen here. And it really didn't. I mean, no. Bryce Young started off so bad, he got benched for Andy Dalton. Obviously, after Andy Dalton's car crash, Bryce Young comes back and maintained the starting role for the rest of the season. And towards the end of the year, he did start actually looking like an NFL quarterback. He did. He looked like he earned himself, at least in my eyes, to at least another year. He earned the 2025-2026 season to see if he could actually be the future in Carolina. But even still, this was just a bad football team. You had a breakout year by Chuba Hubbard, and it still didn't matter. You didn't really even threaten getting over the 5.5 wins. It
wasn't close.
You're just a bad team. And I mean, the NFC South was not like that great of a division. Like the Bucs had 10 wins, they won the division. I mean, there was a really bad stretch with the Falcons there, especially towards the end of the Kirk Cousins tenure, who's now obviously cut from the team.
Yep.
And the Saints, I mean, Derek Carr barely played, and they were just awful after an insane first 2 weeks. So even in one of these weaker divisions in football this year, you weren't able to compete. You weren't able to do anything. And the over-under was just set, I think, way too high for them.
Most definitely.
One that, I mean, it was kind of a win for you, kind of not. You predicted the Ravens were finally going to get over that hump, make the Super Bowl, but you thought the signing to Derrick Henry was going to be huge for the team. You thought he'd have like a little resurgence to his career.
Definitely, Caden. I mean, we both were big fans of the Derrick Henry signing coming into this season, and I thought for sure he was going to re-kick it back into gear. He was going to have one of his better seasons. Not only did he have one of his better seasons, Caden, he popped off into, top 3 career year for Derrick Henry. Absolutely astonishing numbers. He was up there in the Offensive Player of the Year conversation, most definitely, with players like Lamar Jackson, Saquon, of course. And he was definitely the number 2 running back in football this year.
Yep, no doubt about it.
No question. I think you have 1A Saquon Barkley, 1B Derrick Henry, and that's your pretty solidified list. As for getting over the hump, I mean, this Ravens team looked prime. They had the chance, Caden. They were threatening. They have all the pieces. It's just they couldn't make the plays. And that was the most disappointing thing, I think, for me this season was they weren't able to make the plays, even though, like I said, they had the running back Derrick Henry.
Mm-hmm.
I think it should have been Eagles versus Ravens, and we should have seen the two best running backs in football duking it out, running the ball. It would have been electric.
That would have been an amazing game, I think.
That's what it should have been.
But then, yeah, speaking of that, you were behind Derrick Henry, and I came out and said I wouldn't be surprised if he had a career year in touchdowns. He had a career year in touchdowns.
Boom, baby.
18 combined between his rushing and receiving. That's one more than his 2,000-yard season in 2020 where he had 17 total touchdowns. And now you look, Derrick Henry was great. The one thing I didn't mention in that was Lamar is every year in, year out this incredible regular season player. Should have won MVP over Josh Allen.
Most definitely.
I know we didn't mention that because of the Super Bowl. Should have won MVP over Josh.
Yep.
Every statistical category except for rushing touchdowns, Lamar was better. And even still, Lamar had more total touchdowns. So I still don't really understand that. But Lamar was great in the race. And then you see, like I said, he falters in the playoffs. This is one of, I'd say, his better playoffs of his career. But it still wasn't something you want to write home about, especially in that Bills game where you have the bad interception, the bad fumble, and obviously you still had a chance to win.
True.
You don't have those turnovers. Maybe you do. Maybe it doesn't come down to Mark Andrews dropping the ball in the end zone to force overtime.
I agree, but we can't really play the maybe game. I mean,
I
at the
know.
end of the day, he led the game-winning drive. He got the team back on their
it wasn't
wagon.
a winning drive, but
he put the team in position to make the game-winning play, and he threw a pass that hit Mark Andrews.
That's still all Mark Andrews. I'm saying he also had a couple turnovers in that game that weren't good. That we still want to see. I think the Ravens are one of the best teams in the NFL. I'm just still waiting to see, obviously, that full, clean, good
when
postseason.
they stop beating themselves.
When they stop beating themselves.
Correct. That's true, because I think every year the Ravens have just literally got the gun and shot themselves in the foot.
Now, the one, I guess, big miss we had on this was on my end. It was, I loved Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously, coming out of the draft. Going to Arizona, I thought him and Kyler were going to have a great connection. I said, get him out of DraftKings to lead all rookies in receiving yards. Didn't come close in that.
No kidding, it didn't. But, hey, I was right there with you. I had Marvin Harrison Jr. on my fantasy team. I got him pretty early. I thought with Kyler Murray trying to get going again, he would be looking for that big receiver to make the plays. And the connection just never got established. It never got going. And, he finished behind – I think we said confirmed 3 other.
Yeah, I mean, Brock Bowers, who had an insane year.
Yeah.
Brian Thomas Jr., who had a
very underrated,
crazy rookie year, especially when you consider his quarterbacks, or as we just mentioned, Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones.
Mac Jones.
Those were his QBs, McCorkle, Jones, and TLaw. And he still had one of the best rookie seasons, probably the best out of the receivers, either him or Neighbors.
Yeah. And then, of course, Malik Neighbors ended up being a really astonishing player. I'm surprised I actually didn't mention him during the podcast, because that was another player I had on my fantasy team. I got him right after, good old Marvin Harrison. But, like you said, can't win them all, Caden. Still think Marvin Harrison Jr. is a good prospect and still excited what to see, because it's not like he's no bum now.
Oh, not at all.
Discredit who he is as a prospect still.
Yeah, like you were saying, they just could never establish a connection.
Right.
It seemed like going into the season, at least in my eyes, I thought Kyler is going to be finding his 6'5" phenom wide receiver on a lot of plays. Throw him the deep balls, throw him the quick slants, force feed him the ball, see what he can do for your offense. And instead, that became Trey McBride, who was getting 10, 12 catches a game, only 1 touchdown somehow, which is still crazy to think about. But it seemed like that, in my eyes, that's what Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to be. He easily, because we saw throughout the season when he was actually getting the opportunities to make these highlight catches, make these big plays. He was making them. He was converting. He is still one of these elite wide receiver prospects in the NFL, only going into his second year. That is him and Kyler putting a little work in the offseason, get that connection out. He could be very scary going into 2025.
Most definitely. Well, Caden, as the NFL season is officially come to the close, we're going to miss football. It's going to be 6 months, long months, before we see some college action first.
And it'll be the end of August.
Well, we appreciate you guys sticking with us through all of it, through thick and thin.
Yeah, I mean, we're still going to have football content coming your guys' way. We'll start doing stuff more draft-led, our top players at each positions. We'll do some mock drafts in there, obviously, we'll go over the combine once that's going on, obviously more of the draft stuff. And then we're we keep coming out with NBA episodes on Wednesdays. We'll have our MLB episodes on Thursdays, maybe Fridays, depending on how many football episodes or UFC pods we have coming out. So yeah, we're still gonna have all this coming your guys' way. And now that we're kicking in the off season, look out because there might be a couple interviews coming your guys' way here in the coming months.
That's the hope, guys. Most definitely. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all next time.